Hello everyone, this is DC Pro Max from the Hackerbase, and today we have the final lesson on HTML and CSS, because next we will move on to JavaScript. That wonderful world will begin. A world after which your consciousness will not be the same, because you will look at the surrounding world, at the internet, just like Neo. He looked at the Matrix and saw it in code after he realized he was the chosen one. The same thing will practically happen to you as well. But for now, let's get to the final lesson. This lesson is probably the most enjoyable because now we will tidy things up a bit. Look, what I didn't like from the last lesson, considering that we have accumulated a huge amount, but it's not that huge. I've seen CSS files with 6,000 to 7,000 lines of code. No, I didn't misspeak, 6,000 to 7,000. Well, that's absolutely ridiculous. That shouldn't be the case. For this project, even 120 lines is already a lot. So for this project, what do we need to do? First, look, we connected the fonts. This needs to be moved to a separate CSS, meaning we write fonts CSS, then I don't like it. We'll create a folder called styles. We'll move all our CSS there to start with. We'll move this one. See, nothing worked. We need to reconnect it differently in the index. So, styles. Like this, look. The fonts didn't work. Okay, I agree with this state of affairs. Why didn't they work? Because they are now one folder back, you see. If we do it like this, it literally means we are moving one folder back. This is also not quite correct. So we remove these fonts. From here, we move their font, move the font with styles so that everything is in styles further. We go from the root now. Next, we also need to connect these fonts in the session. Preferably do this before activating the other styles. Remember, it should be done in sequence. Therefore, we write fonts here. Okay, everything worked out. We all went from the root, everything is fine. By the way, sorry, I made a mistake. Here, it shouldn't be from the root when you are specifically going from the current folder. That is, you move from the current folder. A slash is specifically against a slash from the root folder of the project. Because if we write a dot here, it won't work, as it will think we are in the styles folder. But we need all fonts connected this way. What else do I want? Of course I want to move the Media Aquarius from here. For this, I will create folders. A new file is already called mobile media. Varys. Okay. Moved. Didn't work because naturally we didn't connect them. So I will connect the media to Varys last of all. So come on, I'm too lazy, even media chickens. All right, cool. This is called CSS decomposition. That is, later you might connect a large number of fonts, then maybe you'll connect other media queries. For example, yes, these are conditions that work more for desktops. That is about if the screen width is more than 760, then this condition is triggered. Because if you want to specify separately for mobile, for example, max width, their border, approximately 3 pixels solid, in total red. See, this worked only for mobile devices. Roughly speaking, if the screen width is less than this, that is for mobile devices. Because if you remember, by default we were writing for mobile devices. Therefore we were kind of adding for the desktop in this way. That is, we didn't write separately for mobile, but rather we wrote separately for the desktop. Now you will have, right away, such source files available for you. Understand? Here you can add for mobile separately, here for desktop, Look, for example, we have our own theme. We create, for instance, classes, where we will write our own themes, classes that we will reuse in other files. For example, GTA, Kim, CSS. What we will transfer. Naturally, I want this dark theme. This will be useful for us in the future, by the way. So good. Now we need to go into index.html and connect it. Everything is working. And in styles, the general styles are written. Even if you have many pages like about, so, or index, you can see what can be done. New folder SRC is generally called SRC, or they name the folder, for instance. Pop. This is the about page. And the page. They are the services folder page. And look here. We place about services. Here we also create separately styled CSS for about separately for services. Styled CSS. This way you have such decomposition separately. Index. Everything is fine. It's here. To avoid misunderstandings. In styles, we will assume that these are our all root styles. Until the theme, background was set, this is all root. Index relates to index. And everything further, which will be and source for the king from the forest. For each page, create a separate HTML, separate CSS style, and connect it as well when you have service HTML. Let's say you fill it out in the same way, you write the same page, and there you connect. There must be composition. This is the very foundation. You shouldn't mix all the basics, because a big mistake beginners make is writing everything in one file. And the most difficult thing you will encounter is forming such an architecture, as there can be many options. I showed you one of them. Naturally, it won't work right now. You see, it doesn't work because the file is not found. We need to fix it quickly with Russia. About. And here, SRC. Services. That's it, we restored functionality, rewrote the path. That's it, the SRC folder. Everything is always located in the SRC folder, all other SRC. That's it, we have a more or less decent project. I won't delete the position. Let it be. If you want to play around later, take a look. Index.html. It should always be the main entry point. Your site's entry point should be named index.html server. Whenever you upload a site to the server, it always looks for it. Index.html, your site will always start from the root folder and the server will look for index.html. Alright, let's move on from this. Decomposition of CSS and how to properly organize the project into folders. Look, everything has appeared. A new thing called variables. Previously, variables could be used with preprocessors like Sass and less. It's like a language on top of CSS that allows you to use different functions and variables. So it's like an enhanced, maxed out CSS, but you need to connect a few things for that. But now look at what has appeared. There's something called CSS variables. Here I wrote root. This means that root is a reference to our document element. Look, document element. The entire site, ours, is an object called document. Don't ask. Why? Just remember this root element, so to speak. The entry point to our entire site, application, and inside I wrote with a dash. You see primary color, primary font, color, heading color, link color for links, the standard color for links, the main color, and so on. And look at what we can do now. Where do we use blue violet? Here, var. This means that we are using a variable. So we need to put this into var. And the title too. That's it, you see everything is working. What's the point? You see, here's the green color. If I replace this variable with heading color, You see, it became green. Why is this necessary? So that you don't have to write it out, you might get confused with a huge amount. This way you can always, for example, define 5 main colors for your website application and use them throughout the application. Look at what I'm going to do. I will, of course, do it. A new file called variables.css. And there I will place this thing. You see, everything went haywire for now, but that's not a big deal. I want to load variables as well. First of all, what fonts? Fonts. First of all, then in Paradise we have everything. We now have variables. Look, here's the point. If this is defined for the root, I want to change it for H2. Set this heading color. Learn. Look at what you can do. You can decompose. If this is for Naruto, you refer to the element. You can specify separately. Look, if I just delete this from here, if I delete it from here for you, we have no color. Look, but I can specify now. So that these variables are only applied to the container. That is, everything outside the container will not be affected. Because if I specify it in the header, for example, not in the header, but in the title, it's located in the header. I'll change it. See, it didn't work. Because here I kind of encapsulated it in the container. That is, these variables. So is this a wrapper on the container? Indicating where these styles will work. That's it. That's it. So these changes apply to all our applications, but this can be separate. For some, you can create separate changes, for example, for a specific page, for example, about, and so on. This was DC Pro Max from the Hackerbase with you. Next, we move on to JavaScript. Subscribe to the Hackerbase on Telegram. The channel is still open. Scan the QR code or follow the link in the description. I will attach the sandbox. You can also try out this code in the description. Thank you for your attention. Goodbye.